Eric Cox with NetCapital here. Welcome to the SampleServe webinar, and I'm grateful to have Russell on the line here, the CEO of SampleServe. Thanks, Russell.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I'll do a couple housekeeping items, and we're going to give 1 or 2 more moments for people to trickle in. Good to see people coming in already. Again, this is Eric Cox. I run our West Coast operations for NetCapital. It's a pleasure to be here. During the next couple of moments, we will have time to ask questions to the founding team at SampleServe, allow you to learn more about the product and the problem, solution, market, all the good things that investors need to know. And of course, please use the Q&A functionality in Zoom. There is also chat functionality, but Q&A is definitely the preferred mode to make sure that we can address all the questions that come in. And as always, if there are any future questions, do not hesitate to visit netcapital.com, search for SampleServe, or go directly to netcapital.com/companies/SampleServe. So we'll give 1 more minute and then we'll kick it off.
Yeah.
Okie dokie, let's go ahead and dive right in then. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you so much for my co-panelists here, Russell. As always, this is being recorded, and everybody who registered for this event will be emailed a link to the YouTube channel. And again, if there are any follow-up questions after we conclude, please do not hesitate to visit the landing page at netcapital.com. Of course, SampleServe is currently raising and has had some success doing so. So really glad to have Russell here. Russell, I love starting off. I know this is kind of a unique occasion. We've never been able to meet, but we have Zoomed. I'm calling in from the West Coast here in Michigan. And so why don't you tell the good people from around the world what is SampleServe, and let's focus on the product first, and then we'll open it up to the team.
Sure. So SampleServe is it's like 4 products in one. The first part is a project management tool where it's specifically geared for environmental projects, for environmental sampling projects. And so the first part is a project management tool. You go in there, you can actually upload all of your site information, maps, historical data, any kind of well construction if you've got monitoring wells, but sampling location information. And then you can set up a work scope for sampling that you're going to do in the future. Could be, for 20 years in the future, or it could be for tomorrow. You set up that work scope, and then we take that work scope and we push that work scope to our mobile field app, and that work scope gets loaded in here, and you're able to go out into the field now and actually collect all the data, take all the pictures, GPS coordinates, and even collect samples, because our device will communicate, our project management tool actually communicates with the laboratory, and we're able to print labels right in the field for your sample containers, sample labels. It could be anything, it could be groundwater, surface water, asbestos, PCB sampling, doesn't matter. We print the labels right at the time of sampling. And then we have a second mobile app that the laboratories use to receive those samples. If you notice our sample bottle labels will actually have a main part of the label, and then we've got separate QR codes that come off and go on the lid of the bottle. And so when those samples arrive at the lab uses our mobile lab app to actually scan those QR codes. And what would normally take a lab 30 minutes to log in a cooler full of samples, we can do that in about 10 seconds. So big time savers there. And then there's no typos or missed keys or anything like that. And then when the lab is done with their analysis, they push the data back to our platform, and then we're able to take that lab data, marry it to the field data, and then generate all kinds of graphics detailing where the contamination is, where it isn't, what the concentrations are, and which direction it's heading. And these are just some of the examples of the graphics that we can do right here. And the key is our product can generate these graphics that typically take about 2 to 3 days for a consulting engineering company to generate, we can generate these things in just a matter of minutes. So it's a huge time saver. We estimate that we save people in the field about 20% of their time, because there's no more having to prepare all your paperwork ahead of time. You just push it right to the tablet. You can go out into the field without even bringing a pencil or a pen, because everything's done on the device. And then, so we save 20% of the field staff time and about 90% of the report preparation time. So it ends up being, ballpark 40 to 60% savings on what the consulting engineering firms were charging or paying before. So that's a big, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And you touched on a whole bunch of problems and solutions. I'm hearing efficiency, accuracy, a lot of really cost savings. Before we circle back to the problem and the solution and really dive in, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Russell. Tell us about yourself, and I know the rest of the team, Frank, Paul, Eric. Love to hear more about your team.
Yeah, so I'm actually a geologist. I graduated, Western Michigan University in Michigan in 1987, and been doing environmental work ever since then. Started my own firm about 5 years out of college, and then sold that. I ran that until about 2001, sold it, and then started actually SampleServe. And when SampleServe first started, we actually started as a company that specialized in collecting samples. And I started developing software because there was a lot of data associated with collecting samples. And so over the years, we've morphed into a software company just because our software just kept getting better and better and better. And then it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, people started really demanding or asking, to use our software. We really didn't kind of think of ourselves as a software company, but they saw it and started to wanted to use it. And so we've kind of transitioned to a software company, and really made the big change starting about last summer, not this past one, but 2019, when we launched our mobile app. And that was really kind of the acceleration of everything. And then that, which negated, or we were bootstrapping for a long time, and it just was kind of slow progress. And that's really where we're at right now, is raising money so that we can make these changes. A couple other people that work with us is Frank Swires. He's our CTO. He actually, has got about 22 years, got a computer engineering degree, about 22 years of software development experience. Spent a lot of time working for Thomson Reuters. He was a software developer there, managed a large team. He actually joined us in May of this past year. And then Eric Bergsma is a partner. He's been with me for about 8 or 9 years, and he is kind of our financial guy, our controller. So he kind of manages all the budgets and everything. And then we also have Paul Mead. He's our COO, and Paul's got a long history of operations on varying different types of companies. He was a project manager for Haggerty, which is a big insurance company in town. So he's very good at organizational structure and management. So that's really our management team. We've got a bunch of other developers and some other geologists that actually do sampling in the field still, but they also do customer support and then onboarding and training of our customers as they come on board.
That's fantastic. And I imagine these investors would be happy to hear that there's a geologist at the helm of this company. So and an avid sailor, but I think we'll move past that for now. So back to the solution and the problems. You mentioned many things that the software solves. Why don't you kind of dive deep into kind of outlining the problems and how SampleServe is the solution for those problems?
So, when you're collecting a sample, it's not just going out and grabbing the sample and putting it in a container. You have to document a lot of, depending on what you're sampling, but there's a lot of field data. It's typically called field data for each sample collected. And depending on what you're testing for, there may be multiple containers. We had a project in Virginia where every sample we collected, we had to have 17 different containers because they were testing for pretty much everything under the sun. And so if you can see, like, here's just a typical label, I would have to write in all that stuff on every label. So 17 labels, which became very tedious. It would literally take me 20 minutes just to fill out the sample bottle labels. And then you got to write the field data that you're collecting down in a different book or on a different form. And so it was very tedious. And that's really why I started developing the software, is that I, frankly, just got tired of all the manual work and the time it took. And then, a good part of the time, the laboratory would actually call me and go, hey, can you talk to that guy, Russell Schindler, and ask him to write better? Because they literally had a hard time reading my penmanship. But you can understand, if you're out in the cold and the rain and you got to fill out 17 of these things, you're trying to be fast and your penmanship goes down. So that was really kind of the impetus of like figuring out ways to have labels printed. And we started out by pre-printing them in the field. So most of them were filled out ahead of time, and all you had to do was write your name and time. But as we kind of progressed, it was like, hey, now we can just sign our name on the device. And if you'll notice, it actually prints your signature. So I can just sign it one time and I can print my signature on every sample bottle. So even if I got 17 of them, I don't have to sign my name 17 times. So, and then it's got the date and the time and everything is legible. And so that's kind of, solving that problem, the labeling problem. And then laboratories, because we want them to participate in our program, because it helps us kind of keep the data digital from the point of collection all the way to the reporting process. So we knew we had to get labs involved so that they could take the data digitally and then give it back to us digitally. So that's why we built the lab app to kind of get them to participate. And then the QR code, it's a big time saver for them. As I mentioned, a cooler full of samples will typically take them about 30 minutes of data entry. And we've got that down to just seconds. So they like that. And there's some other features of the lab app that the labs are pretty interested in. We've got a couple of labs that have asked us to kind of customize some stuff, and they're paying us to do that. And then also some labs are interested in actually licensing our digital chain of custody for use on their own and other types of products. So there's a lot of potential. And I might add that we've actually got 2 issued patents on our digital chain of custody. So when I collect a sample, that's part of the signature. It knows it's me because of 3-part authentication, right? I know I entered my username and password, so it knows it's me because of that, because it also, as you can see, prints my name on there as well. And then I sign my name. That's the second authentication, so my signature's on there. And then every time we collect a sample, the user is required to take a selfie. So we've got the username and password, the signature, and a picture. We also collect a date and timestamp, so we know exactly when it was collected. And then we also collect the GPS coordinate. So for every sample collected, there's 5 points of authentication. And then every time you transfer custody, so if I've got 10 samples and I'm going to drop them off at the lab, we'll go through that same process. The lab actually has to go through the process to receive the sample. So there's a lot of other market verticals that we could get into. We've had conversations with an arson investigator, right? They're collecting evidence at an arson scene. They're interested in using it. We're not into these market segments yet, but they're potential market segments. We had a conversation with a fisheries department up in Canada. They have to go out and collect fish samples, and actually will take a tissue sample out of the fish, send that off to the lab if they're testing for something. They want to be able to document that, but also they want to use the device to document where the fish was, what kind of species it was. They're going to put in all the measurements and everything, and then take a picture of the fish as well. And so now they have the sample that's coordinated with the data through the QR code and the barcode at the lab. And so they can marry everything together, and we can create the report that they need through our system. So so there's a lot of different verticals, but the key is we're able to collect data in the field, no matter what you're sampling, keep it tied to the sample through simple digital methods, QR codes and barcodes, get it to the lab, get it back to our platform, and then we can generate reports. So Any one of those verticals we can generate a report on. We just need an example of a report from the customer. Like if you want us to do a fire investigation report, give us an example. We can mimic that report and put the data on in that report. Again, keeping it all digital. And the nice thing is literally minutes after the lab data is done, your report is done. So that's really the biggest benefit. There's not a lot of time spent moving data and creating reports.
Yeah, that the efficiency, the accuracy, the kind of the authentication, all those I think would really make a huge value in this space. And then I'm glad that you shared some of the other verticals. As soon as you mentioned digital chain of custody, my spider senses started tingling about evidentiary burden. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the justice system as well. But I love the tip of the spear that you've taken here in the geological standpoint. No, that's great. Thank you for that. Let's shift gears just a little bit and let's talk about the business model. No surprise that investors in the space are going to want to know how does SampleServe make money? Can you take a deep dive into that?
Yeah. So so our business model in one sense is people give us their data and then we turn around and sell it back to them. So our business model in longer form is we give away that project management tool where you go in and you can set up your project and you can enter in all your information, historical data, everything. So they're putting data into this thing. They then set up their scope of work, right? Use our mobile app, which we give away for free. They got to get their own hardware. We don't provide the hardware, but the software, the app is free. And then the lab app is also free. So there's this data flow, right? And then what we charge for is that report because we know that that's what they want. They will get, every time you're collecting data, you're ultimately doing something. You're not just going to leave it in an Excel file. They're trying to generate a report. And so that's what we charge for. And depending on the vertical, there's different prices for different types of reports. And we kind of look at the complexity of the report, what it would actually take them to actually generate their report on their own. And then we charge based on the number of samples that were collected. And then we charge for the report. For instance, for groundwater, we charge $15 a sample to do reports. So at a typical gas station, it's very common to collect 10 samples. So they'll go out to a typical gas station, collect 10 samples, and then to get their report out the back end, it's $150. So we've got a bunch of clients already. We've probably got, I think there's about 180 projects in our system right now. And a typical project is about $1,000 per project per year. So on average, some are a little bit more, some are a little bit less, but one project represents about $1,000 of ARR. So we like to track the number of projects. That's a KPI for us, a key product indicator, and then numbers of samples as well. So, we like to see new projects and we like to see samples collected.
That's great. No, that makes it very clear. But providing the software, free of charge, really trying to be scalable, allowing you to get more clients early, and then, getting them to pay at the end. And you started talking a little bit about traction. 180 clients so far. Can you talk about a little bit more in the details on traction? Is that more recently than later? Are we seeing certain industries or sectors? You mentioned gas stations. Can you tell us a little bit more about who's using the product?
So we've got two main client groups, consulting engineering companies, and then property owners, for instance, like gas station owners, oil companies. We've got one energy company where they actually pump the crude oil out of the ground. They've got 35 projects in there. We've got BP Amoco working through a consulting engineering company. They've got about 52, 53 projects in there. 7-Eleven, same thing. They've got a bunch of projects through a consulting firm. And so, and they're adding new projects. If you look at it, we've added about one project per business day since the beginning of the year. The trend is actually going up. Where we're at right now is we just got to onboard more customers, get more people out there. And that's really what we're raising money for, is to, do more marketing and more sales, get the word out there. Right now, I'm pretty much doing all the marketing and sales myself. And so we need to kind of beef up that game because the product works. if we get our product into somebody's hands, it's 100% that they become a customer. So when they use our product in the field, I literally just had a meeting this morning. Girl set up her project all by herself, had very little, tutorial on my part. We did do a little webinar with them, but she was able to figure it out, set up her project, and loved it. And had no problems going out there, setting up the project, collecting the samples, and I know that they'll be adding a whole bunch more in the next few weeks. So, so that was kind of pleasing, and we're having more and more of those conversations every day as the word gets out there and people use it. So, so that's really kind of how we market, where we're going with this. And then, as we expand and get kind of set in the environmental industry, we want to experiment with other markets like the cannabis market. As more and more states legalize cannabis, there's all kinds of the rules and the regs at each state. I have all kinds of product safety testing, and most states require chain of custody and third-party sampling. So our product fits right in perfectly with new cannabis regulations, being implemented across the country.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting point. And Netcapital as a whole, we're a compliance company at our core. We help make it easier for people to comply with federal securities regulations. We've worked with companies to raise money in the compliance space, and I'm glad that you shared that component of it. Any regulated industry could find value in digital chain of custody authentication and tracking. Awesome. And then I know you mentioned 2 granted patents. Congratulations on that. I know that's not an easy feat. And so I do want to go eventually into the competitive landscape and how the patents lead to your defensibility. But before we get there, can you share a little bit about the market size? What are you seeing as a total addressable market, for example?
So just in the environmental world, the environmental engineering market, environmental sampling, there's about 135 million environmental samples collected every year. It's about a $33 billion a year market when you look at engineering, environmental engineering services, sampling. Laboratory market is another $9 billion a year, where the lab fees on top of that. So it's a huge market. And we're just scratching the surface. 135 million samples collected every year. If you do the math on it, it's a potential, based on our report and our cost, it's a $2 billion opportunity for us. So we'll obviously never get 100% of the market, but even if we can get just 5%, we're hundreds of millions of dollars. So so that's kind of what we're shooting for, is just to kind of get in with some laboratories. As I mentioned, we just had some email exchanges with the 2 biggest labs in the country earlier today. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of headway that we're making, because it is a very cost-effective solution to a lot of problems that they have. So, but in the cannabis market, that's just growing and growing, and we're not really into the cannabis market. As I mentioned, I'm a geologist, been doing environmental work, and so to take time and go right now and go into a market that I'm just not familiar with, I feel like my time is best spent on doing what I know right now. But it is an opportunity that I see for the future, and I get actually, as people find out about it, I get calls from labs. I had an email again this morning from a laboratory that does cannabis testing, and they're interested in using our product. Again, we haven't really gone into it. I've not marketed in that area, but it's a huge opportunity, and it may just fall in our lap. I'm hoping it does. So.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And I know in the most recent election, every state that had cannabis on the ballot passed the measure. I want to say it was either 4. I want to say it was 4, maximum 5 states, but it does seem like that is the trend. Sorry.
Yeah, there was I think 13 that had either recreational and or medical prior to that. So I think it's up to like 17 or 18 states now. So,
yeah,
and the key is,
that's good to know.
Yeah, each one of those states has rules on testing the raw, product coming out of the fields or the warehouses. And then they also have rules for testing, at each stage, where if you're going to turn it into a brownie or a gummy bear or something like that, You got to test along those lines as well. And it's, most states, as far as I'm aware of, require third-party sampling and a chain of custody because they want to make sure that, your the stuff you're testing is true to what you're actually putting out on the market. So that's where, having this digital chain of custody, because if you do it on paper, it's just going to become less efficient. And we have had some conversations with some of the companies out there that do like the retail part of a cannabis exchange. They'll do software for the dispensaries, that kind of stuff. And so we've had some conversations with those companies as well. Haven't gotten that far just because, like I said, we're concentrating on the environmental market where we're basically experts. So
yeah, no, that sounds great. And then that's a really interesting, regardless of which industry, there's a real consumer protection element here. And so it makes sense, especially with consumables, that might be a whole another application. But back to the bread and butter, back to the geological implications here. Can you tell me a little bit more about the competitive landscape? Who else is in the space, and how do you differentiate yourself, from the other companies purely in the environmental application?
So really all the competition that exists out there right now, the main competition is just the status quo, right? It's the engineering companies that are using paper. They're out there doing the work right now using the old methods. So that's really our main competition. There are some companies out there that have tablets for recording data in the field. So that you can go out in the field and enter your data, and they'll send you a file with all your data. You get an Excel file and PDF, maybe both. And then some of them can actually even take a little bit of that data and put it on reports. We are, as far as I'm aware, the only company that's printing labels in the field. We're the only company that has a digital chain of custody that tracks, with certainty, the who, the where, and the when of every sample collected. Digital chain of custody to the lab, and we're the only lab that has a lab app for receipt. We're the only company that has a lab app so that labs can actually receive that data efficiently as well. So we have a distinct advantage, and we've got some protections in the terms of 2 patents on that digital chain of custody, 2 issued patents, and I actually have 7 patents to my name right now. 2 of them are the digital chain of custody. The other 5 are actually related to groundwater remediation, ways to clean up groundwater.
Fantastic. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. It really feels like it's you're up against the pen and paper, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's great. And this is a good time, about halfway through our allotted time here, to remind people, please continue to use the Q&A functionality through Zoom. I'll continue to monitor that, and we really want this to be as interactive as it can be in a virtual setting. So please do not hesitate to ask. And I also added in the chat a link directly to SampleServe's offering page on the NetCapital platform. So again, there's more information there, and you can feel free after the event to click on that, and you can invest directly through there through debit, credit card, ACH, or wire. Back to regularly scheduled programming. Russell, your SampleServe has had quite a bit of success in the press. There's a handful of articles that you've included on your offering page. Is there a general theme on what's being covered, or are there a couple of things you want to highlight from the press standpoint that it seems like they're interested in about SampleServe?
Yeah, anything environmental obviously has got a kind of a certain public interest topic to it. And then, cannabis, there's been some articles on the ability to use our product in the cannabis industry. So there's just been a handful of articles on both those topics. And, environmental is a kind of a sexy industry to be in. So that's part of it. And then just recently, we were actually, I applied to be on a TV show called Elevator Pitch. That's probably one of the most interesting things that have happened to us. I applied to be on a TV show called Elevator Pitch. They had over 2,000 applicants. They picked 30 companies. We were one of them. And they actually filmed it on the 18th of October. So they filmed. It was all done via the web because of COVID and everything. And we ended up getting a deal. So this show actually will air December 2nd. So I think I've posted some things about it on NetCapital. But yeah, so and as we get it closer to November or December 2nd, we'll obviously up the publicity on that. So we did get a deal out of the show, and it was a lot of fun too, So
yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. I am definitely looking forward to seeing the aired product, and that's just one of them. Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes as well. And then, as you mentioned, there are some that are specifically interested in the potential cannabis application. But keep up the good work on that. I do like that one specifically discussed your hard work, culture of hard work and innovation. And if you would allow a couple of moments, you have a small core team, but can you share a little bit about how you've been able to maintain culture and why that's really important for SampleServe?
Yeah, so we're out of Traverse City, Michigan. It's a small town, but it's got a good culture to it. It's kind of turning into a tech town. I actually founded a tech group in this town. It actually ends up being one of the biggest tech groups in the Midwest right now. We've got about 2,000 members. So, I'm knee deep in like technology and being able to advance technology. And, and the key is it's not just technology, it's really leveraging technology in the business models. And that's really kind of one of the things that I'm really interested in is like not just, hey, you've got a fancy new app. It's like, how do you use that app and how do you, get value from your customer and, make money at it? So there's lots of ways to do that. That's one of the ways we're doing it is by giving away all of our data collection products away at no cost and then selling what we know that they want to do at a price that they just can't beat. Even if they try to do it themselves, we can still generate that report cheaper than they can do it themselves. And there's a lot of value there. So that's really kind of like my core being is just looking at technology and leveraging it into business models. I've started a lot of companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur at heart. And so, we tend to attract people. It's a small town, like I said. We attract a lot of people who kind of have mindedness that are entrepreneurial in spirit and creative. And I encourage that stuff too. I've never been a micromanager. I've always tried to encourage people to think outside the box. And if they don't agree with me, tell me. I hope we can keep that culture going. I think we can. This is not my first company I've ever started, and every company I've had has worked, but most of them have worked out. They still exist today. I've exited out of a few companies, and so I think we can do that. I try and hire good people and hire creative people.
That's great. Culture of success and allowing people to run within their lane. That sounds great for aspiring entrepreneurs that might be on the line here. Again, please continue to fill in the Q&A. This is pretty much my last prepared question before we continue to pepper in the questions that you guys have or anything else that you'd like to share, Russell. But before we move into that part of the discussion, Russell, if you share with me, it looks like a solid piece of the use of proceeds plans to go into scaling the operation. Can you talk a little bit more about general use of proceeds and then how you plan to scale?
Yeah, so we'll have a big emphasis on digital marketing, just getting the word out there. A lot of video. We've actually prepared a lot of video already. We got a great video guy and an editor. He knows how to tell a story in a very efficient, short amount of time. Because it is a complicated application. It's there's a lot of parts to it. And so being able to explain that quickly and easily, so that's where digital marketing, and then customer support, onboarding, being able to, get the people funneled down into, who's going to be a customer, who maybe won't be a customer, and then sales, just once we get that lead, get a salesperson on them and just kind of make sure they go along the line or the funnel that we've built. Now, one of the biggest problems we have in terms of onboarding people is, getting the hardware in their hands, right? Because you got to have the tablet, you got to have the printer in order for our product to work. And so we're still working through solutions there. We've got a leasing option where people can lease it from us. And we work with a third-party supplier, so they can go online and just sign up for a lease. We ship them the product. So that's really if I had to say we have one hurdle, it's literally just getting the hardware in their hands so that they can use our product. And we've been creative about doing that with, like I said, with a leasing option, because it's about $1,000 worth of equipment you got to get in your hands. And some people are a little hesitant to outlay that kind of cash with, not knowing whether or not they like it or not. So we do a 30-day free trial, and then we have an equipment lease. So it seems to have smoothed. And initially, it's still young now, but the initial response seems to be positive for a lower price point for entry. And then, once they get addicted to it, then I think we'll be able to kind of reel them in and keep them as a customer. So,
yeah. And actually, on that point, and please continue to participate as you will, chat. On that point, you're not manufacturing the hardware though? Or you said you had third-party partners for that?
So we didn't want to be in the hardware business because it's just simple stuff you can get off of Amazon. This is a Samsung Tab A, any Android tablet. We went with Android initially. We will have an Apple product probably first quarter. We went with Android just because the Android tablet's just cheaper, right? So we want to get that entry point low. Android works well. So between the tablet, the printer, and associated chargers and everything, it's about $1,000 worth of equipment. And so we went with a third-party company. If somebody wants to go to Amazon and get their own, that's fine too. We do have to supply the labels, but we try to make it as seamless as possible. So you can just click here, boom, 3 days later, you got your equipment and you can get started.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think this will probably bring us home here. For any potential investors that would also might be potential users, what's the best way for them to get involved with the SampleServe product? I see SampleServe.com is one channel.
Yeah. So, I actually just sent out a whole series of emails today. People can actually go in and actually try out the reporting part of the product. Again, we get a 30-day free trial. So they can go in and actually upload all their historical data and do reports on their historical data at no cost. So, we only charge for samples going forward. So if you've got in a historical project, you can upload your data and generate reports right now at no cost. And so for 30 days, and then, that's how you can get started without even having to have the hardware. You can check out the reporting, but because you've already got the data. And then, if you want to go forward, then we got to just sign up. Either way, you go to the website, sign up to create an account. We've got a whole series of how-to videos that walk you through how to set everything up. Each video is between 1 and 3 minutes long. So, it just makes it more so people are going to watch the videos, how to do, a specific task. It's very organized and systematic. And that's how people are able to onboard with as little guidance from us as possible. We try to make it as self-service as much as possible. And those videos seem to be working. And that's where, video training is a lot less intensive or time intensive on our end if people can go and train themselves. So that's how we're concentrating on onboarding people. And then really an emphasis like, hey, you don't even have to invest in the hardware at all. Just go in, you've got data, upload it and do your own reports. It'd probably take you about 90 minutes tops to really try out the product. And then if you like the reporting side, you can actually become a sampling customer and, get your own hardware.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a really cool idea. I think that creates a ton of value up front with the idea that you can continue to provide value for a fee going forward. No, that's fantastic. Anything else that you would like to add, Russell, or any last minute questions want to come in here, or we can start to share the closing remarks?
Just that, we're ready to take off. I mean, the product works. We're onboarding people all the time. Like I said, we just got to get the word out there. When I am talking to a customer and some people are a little hesitant, what I do tell them is like, hey, look, whether it's SampleServe or some company I've never heard of, I think we can all agree that digital data collection is the future. And I think we've got a really good solution here. It works. You know, people that use it, I've heard comments from customers, people, especially field techs out in the field. You know, we had one guy tell me, he goes, look, if my company goes back to doing paper, I'm quitting. It's like, you know, he's just like, this is just too easy, and he doesn't want to go back to the old way. And so this is just the future, and we've got a good product, and we just need, like I said, we need to tell the world about it.
That's great, Russell. Thanks for that. That's a good place to be in. And that's a good place for us to wrap up. So thank you so much to all the potential investors or current investors that showed up for this live Q&A. Again, Russell, thank you so much for your time and sharing about SampleServe. And I can speak for myself that I'm grateful to have had a small piece in the success that you're having right now. And we're grateful to have you on the platform. So anybody who would like to do any follow-up questions, again, netcapital.com and search SampleServe, or go directly to netcapital.com/companies/SampleServe. And there is actually some question and ask functionality directly in the offering page there as well. So with that being said, thank you so much to everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for the opportunity. Bye now.